מה אומרים עלינו באלג'זירה? בואו נראה.
Right, well, let's bring you in some breaking news where an Iranian missile has just made impact in Israel's city of Haifa. Right, well, these are the latest scenes there. Those are the latest scenes that you've just seen coming out of Israel. Iran's armed forces have warned Israelis to leave the vicinity of, quote, vital areas. That's according to state television. There's been projectiles in the skies of Tel Aviv and Jerusalem as well. Let's go straight to Bernard Smith, who's live for us in the Jordanian capital, Amman. He's reporting from there because the Israeli government has banned Algezira from reporting in Israel and the occupied territories. Bernard, so we're seeing more of those explosions. What more can you tell us?
Well, it was to be expected. We've had the air raid siren also here over the Jordanian capital, Amman, where I am, although I haven't seen anything in the skies yet, although there were a couple of searchlights pointing up at the skies earlier on. Haifa was already targeted overnight, Saturday into Sunday. It's a very strategically important Israeli port. Oil is a refinery. The Israelis said earlier on today, before this apparent strike, that refining was still going on there. Also, there were sirens over northern Israel this afternoon. Then the Israeli military said that its missile defense system had stopped those landing and nothing was hit. Most of the damage, when Iran is sending most of its missiles, appears to happen overnight, and certainly most of the damage was last night so far, Saturday night into Sunday. At least 14 Israelis killed, 2 of them children in that, 7 killed in a direct hit on an apartment building, and 4 others killed in a hit on a Palestinian-Israeli village. So it looks like Iran has resumed firing missiles again this evening. There have, as you've mentioned, already been hits on Israeli territory. We haven't seen anything going over here in Amman, but that's just over where we're standing. But the missiles can, of course, take other routes. But for now, we just know that those targets have been hit in Haifa and, as you've been reporting, Tel Aviv.
Yeah, of course, those missiles, usually you see them in passing through other countries before they do arrive in Israel. And Bernard, of course, this was expected, as you mentioned, because both sides have said that they will continue. Now, what do we know in terms of what the leadership has been saying in Israel? Have we been hearing from them at all in the last hour or so?
Well, we haven't heard from them in Israel just very recently. We know that Benjamin Netanyahu, the Israeli Prime Minister, he's given an interview to the American cable network Fox News, and in that interview he's said that regime change in Iran could be the result of Israel's attack. The Israeli military says officially that our goal is to remove the capabilities of this regime to annihilate us. The goal is not regime change. I guess the difference there is, while the military says the goal is not regime change, Netanyahu saying it could happen as a result of what we're doing. Netanyahu was also asked to comment on a Reuters report that Donald Trump had vetoed Netanyahu's plans to kill Iran's supreme leader in those first wave of attacks. Netanyahu said, I'm not going to go there at the moment. We know that Israel had clearly compromised at some level Iran's intelligence services because they were able to identify and knew where significant figures in the military and the scientific community lived. Also, an interesting intelligence line out of Israel as well. They've arrested 2 Jewish Israelis on suspicion of working for Iranian intelligence services. We don't often hear about that. We hear, as we've heard, about how Iranian intelligence has been breached in Iran by Israel's security services, but not often the other way around. The Israelis actually say there are 1 of 22 cases involving thwarted attempts by Iran to infiltrate Israel.
Bernard, Israel has been receiving these rockets not just since this escalation with Iran, because this all started after the October 7th attack. So this isn't something that the Israelis aren't used to, but we haven't seen it to this scale before, have we?
No, the Israelis are used to rockets. They've caught in conflicts in fighting in Gaza before October the 7th. During and after October the 7th, there have been rockets fired by Hamas at Israel. It's inconvenienced Israelis a bit. It would lead to the closure of Ben Gurion Airport for perhaps a day and a half or so. But there's been nothing on this scale. The war in Gaza, Israelis are conscious of it, but have not really been inconvenienced by it or troubled by it. But this is something totally different. This is directly affecting the day-to-day lives of Israelis. As an indication, Ben Gurion Airport closed for at least 3 days, possibly indefinitely, Israel's main airport. Well, that's unprecedented, certainly in the last 30 or 40, maybe 50 years. So the fact that travel to Israelis' airport has been disrupted to that extent gives you an indication of the disruption to Israeli life. That said, the government has said that today in Israel was a normal working day. The stock market was actually slightly up as the Israelis try to keep the economy as open as possible.
Yeah, and just to remind our viewers as to what they're seeing exactly on the screen, there's those two live pictures there from Haifa, and we've also been seeing Tel Aviv for both of those pictures that we're seeing. The smoke that's rising from the skyline of Haifa, that's after Iranian missiles. One of them is apparently supposed to have made impact in the Israeli city of Haifa. Let's speak to Ori Goldberg. He's an Israeli political commentator joining us live now from Tel Aviv. Ori, you're where these missiles have been flying across to Tel Aviv. What's the situation where you are?
Where I am now, we are sheltering. I stepped out of the shelter to speak with you. But apparently no missiles have been directed our way. The reports of impact are in Haifa and in the southern part of Israel. The middle stretch, the coastal plain around Tel Aviv, has apparently not suffered any kind of real damage at the moment.
And Ori, we are expecting more of these missiles. Iran has promised that they're sending more of these. How is it amongst the Israelis? Is there a sense of panic? Obviously, they've been told to take shelter, but at the same time, the Israeli Prime Minister is saying that this will continue for a long time, this situation with Iran.
Well, I guess I could describe the mental state of the Israeli collective as somewhat schizophrenic. On the one hand, you've got massive support for the government for this war in Iran. Most Israelis believe it's high time Israel did something about the quote-unquote Iranian threat. And even the tens of thousands who protested regularly against Netanyahu support him in his effort. On the other hand, there is a general awareness of the fact that the stated goals of this war with Iran are not the sort of goals Netanyahu can actually realize or fulfill. In that sense, Israelis are reminded of Netanyahu's war in Gaza, where he failed abysmally to achieve any of the goals Israel under him set itself. But Israelis are not expressing their mistrust publicly. They're not coming out against the government or the war. They are shifting into personal survival mode. You do what you have to do, you buy food, you buy medicine, you stock up on all the essentials, and you take care of yourself because you can't really expect the state to care for you. So if our government says it was a normal working day, that is very far from the Israeli reality that I'm seeing.
Ms. Ori, I mean, when it comes to the situation at the moment for Israelis, there had been a lot of protests against Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, especially calling for the end of the war in Gaza and to bring back the captives as soon as possible. Do you think that the support for Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and his government on this one in particular will actually go up?
Yes, it's already gone up massively. There's nothing that rallies Israelis around the flag like a good war, and Netanyahu came out all guns blazing with the first night of the strike. Israel appears to be having its way with senior Iranian leaders and with Iranian industries. The thing is, Israel doesn't seem to know what it actually wants to do in Iran. Again, just like in Gaza, it doesn't have a clear goal. It doesn't have an end game. It doesn't have any sort of strategy. And Israelis, I think, are beginning to realize that. Even so, the general sense, the collective vibe is one of support and even pride and, being very, very certain that Israel holds the upper moral hand in this case.
Mr. Ori, obviously you've been seeing what's been going on in the last few days. Now that a few days have gone by where we're seeing a bit more of Israel's strategy, what do you think it is here? Because initially when it started off, it was saying it was going for nuclear sites and to dismantle Iranian's nuclear infrastructure. And now it's going after the energy sector and so on and so forth. And also Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu very clearly quite happy if there's a regime change there.
Yeah, precisely. The thing is, Israel doesn't really have a strategy. Israel is trying to grab whatever it can. It's using the dominance that it has managed to create for now in the skies above Iran to bomb as many diverse targets as possible. But there is no guiding thread here. There's no sense that Israel knows what it's doing. And most importantly, there's no sense that Israel knows or has any plan to stop. Without knowing when you're going to stop, a war can last indefinitely. If you insist on defining an Israeli strategy, that strategy may be that in Iran, just like in Syria and Lebanon, Gaza, the West Bank, Israel wants to be able to fire at anyone they want, kill anyone we want, for as long as we want, without paying any sort of price or bearing any sort of responsibility or suffering any kind of consequence. If there's an Israeli strategy, that's the Israeli strategy.
Okay. Thanks very much, Ori Goldberg in Tel Aviv there, bringing us the latest on what's happening where he is as well.